Right. Hey, everybody. We are live here on YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, fan base. We are live. Tonight's lecture by Neville Goddard, The Cup of Experience, October the 27th, 1967. All things exist in the human imagination, and I mean that literally. No one can know of imagination who has not tasted the cup of experience. In the Psalms, we are told that in the hand of the Lord there is a cup that is bubbling over with wine which has been well mixed. And John asks, shall I not drink up the cup of salvation which the Father has given me and call upon his name? When we read these words, we wonder what it's all about. Well, let me share with you a vision of mine about 30 years ago. This night, I found myself in an infinite field of beautiful sunflowers. Each flower had a human face, and each was perfect. If one smiled, all smiled. If one bent over, all bent over. What one did, they all did. As I stood there observing this fantastic display of beauty, I knew that I, singled out as I was, expressed a greater liberty and freedom than all of these human flowers put together. And when I returned to my body on my bed, I knew that in some strange way, I was separated from that which I once had formed a part. Then I understood these words from the 8th chapter of Romans. We were made subject unto futility, not by our own will, but by the will of him who subjected us in hope that we will be set free from this bondage to decay and obtain the glorious liberty of the sons of God. You and I here in this world are detached from that field of beauty, that chorus where everyone moves in unison. But we are separated, completely incarnated, which is essential to individuality. This incarnation involves separation from the Father, death, and descent into hell. You may not know it, but this world is hell. Here we are separated from the Father, and there is a fear in the heart of man that he may never again see the Father, who from all eternity was built into himself. But may I assure you, having realized the Father, that your fear need not continue. You will find the Father, and when you do, you will find him as yourself. You are separated from the Father for a divine purpose. And without instantly assuming this garment of flesh and blood, thereby becoming completely incarnated, you would never find him. Instead, you would forever remain a part of the field of sunflowers. I can't describe the beauty of each flower, each a beautiful human face moving in perfect harmony. But now, you are no longer part of the chorus, but completely individualized. You will tend forever towards greater and greater individualization. You are subjected to this world and completely incarnated in it for a divine purpose. That purpose is to create within yourself the Spirit of Jesus, which is continual forgiveness of sin. Believe me when I tell you that God is love, for I stood in his presence and he embraced me. But do you know that love, divided from imagination, is eternal death? I'll show you why. I have a friend who is unemployed, without funds, and burdened beyond measure. I can't deny I love him. And when I think of him, my memory tells me how poor he is, that he is unemployed, without funds, and burdened. I will keep him in that state forever through love, unless I know how to use my imagination. So no one can ever know imagination who has not tasted the cup of experience. Entering this world, We love our mothers, fathers, husbands, wives, children, and friends, but do not know how to change them from what they are into what they ought to be, unless we drink the cup of experience and practice the great secret of imagining. That is why I say love divided from imagination is eternal death. Imagination is God's great gift. He is love, yes. He is infinite power and wisdom, but his creative power is imagination. Giving you his creative power, he gives you his son, Christ, defined in the second chapter of Paul's letter to the Corinthians as the power of God and the wisdom of God. And because of this great gift, when you see one that you love dearly as unemployed, without funds, and in great need, embarrassed and unclothed, you can represent him to yourself as gainfully employed, beautifully clothed, happy, and debt-free. Then, as you persist in exercising your imagination concerning your friend, the world will remold itself and shape him in the likeness of one who is gainfully employed, debt-free, and happy. All this is possible because of God's great gift to you. Remember the story of the prodigal son? The first son did not leave his father, but the second, asking to be given what was his, went into the world and wasted all. When the second one, having experienced the world of death, remembered his father, he turned around, and the father gave him the robe, the ring, and prepared a fatted calf for a merry reception in honor of his son who had returned. When the first son complained, the father said, "Son, you are always with me. You never detached yourself, but have always remained here, and all that is mine is yours." Because of this, the first son knew nothing of the power of imagination. Everything was his, but he didn't know how to appropriate it. Tonight, you could have $1 billion in the bank and die of starvation if you didn't know it was there. All that the Father has is yours, but you will never know it until you use your imagination to appropriate it. You and I have departed from the Father. It was his will to subject us to this world of futility. He did it in the hope that we would be set free from this world of decay where everything dies and obtain the glorious liberty of the sons of God, those who exercise their power of imagination lovingly. Now, the parable of the prodigal son is followed by the story of the unjust steward. You will find these stories in the 15th and 16th chapters of the book of Luke. Now, parables are wonderful stories told in the hope that man will discover their fictitious nature and extract its meaning. In this story, the unjust steward is commended for his actions. The original meaning of the word steward is the keeper of the pig, and the pig is the universal symbol of the Savior of the world. In other words, when the steward, the keeper of the pig, tells you his story, will you eat it? Will you believe what he has experienced? Millions of people today will not accept the story of salvation, so they refuse the pig as food. But unless you eat my body and drink my blood, you have no life in you. In the story, the unjust steward is accused of not keeping a proper record and is called to give an accounting. Summoning his master's debtors one by one, the steward said to the first, "How much do you owe my master?" He said, 100 measures of oil. And he said to him, "Take your bill, sit down quickly and write 50. Then he said to another, "And how much do you owe?" Well, he replied, 100 measures of wheat. He said to him, "Take your bill and quickly write 80. Going through the entire list, the steward falsified each record. And when the master heard what his servant was doing, he commended him highly for his action. Now, you cannot conceive of anyone commending a dishonest employee. So, what is the parable telling you? That there is a record being kept in you. Who is keeping it? Your memory. You know what you saw today, what you heard, what the mail brought, and how you felt because of the recording being in you. Perhaps someone called to tell you they were having a marital problems. Now you are called upon to falsify the record. Having heard their message of distress, must you live with it? No, not if you are an unjust steward. Called upon to give an accounting of your day at its end. Have you falsified the records? Or are you going to let the curtain fall upon this day without changing the record regarding the person in distress? Told to sit down quickly and modify the conversation. If not 100%, then 50%, then 20%. But change your memory of the conversation. For although we are detached, we are one in the human imagination. I see it all so clearly now. After 30 odd years, I still see that scene more vividly than I see the flowers my mother grew. Being passionately fond of flowers, every day mother would take her parasol, umbrella, and walk in the garden. But my vision of the sunflowers transcends any memories of my mother's lovely garden. Every sunflower a face, and every face so distinct, like a chorus. When one moved, all moved in the same direction. No one violated the unseen or unheard order. If one smiled, they all smiled. As I watched, I realized I was freer than all of them put together. Then I knew that this division had to take place. We had to be made subject unto futility, for separation from the Father involves death. We had to die to what we were and descend into the world of hell in order to create in us the Spirit of Jesus, which is the continual forgiveness of sin. Forever justifying our world, claiming he slapped me first or she pushed me, we speak with the voice of hell, the voice of self-justification. But in heaven, it is all forgiveness of sin, because all things exist in heaven, the human imagination. Nothing happens on the outside that did not first take place in you. So you must forgive by changing the cause. If you try to justify or condemn, you live in the state of hell, for everything is taking place in you. Now, seemingly separated from the Father, don't despair, for he was built in you from eternity. And you will find him when David stands before you and calls you Father. He will not be a David, but the David, the eternal David, who was put into the mind of man before that the world was. Although it doesn't seem possible, you and I were detached from that infinite field of beauty by an act of love. We were made subject unto futility, not by our own will, but by the will of him who intended to give himself to us. But in order to do it, we had to be individualized by complete incarnation, complete insulation, where we think we are human. Being a member of a family, having friends, and living in a world of people, you are insulated and completely separated. This incarnation is essential to your individuality, and when you begin to awake, you awaken to the realization that you are he who subjected yourself. For you become the very being the world calls God the Father. This is the great story as I understand it from my visions, which have paralleled Scripture. So tonight, I ask you to exercise your own wonderful human imagination. Since your friends are only yourself outpictured, Put them in a glorious light. Don't justify their actions by saying, it serves them right, because all things exist in you. There is no one out there, but all in you. So if you fail 1,000 times saying, how often, Lord, must I forgive my brother who sinned against me? The answer will come 70 times 7. May I tell you, you can't say sin in any other way than as recorded in the 51st Psalm, the 4th verse. Against thee, O Lord, thee only have I sinned and done that which is evil in thy sight. Therefore thy justification is in order. Who is this being in whom I have sinned? His name is I am. How have I sinned against thee and only thee? By seeing someone in my world that is in need and allowing them to remain there. For I cannot sin against another as I am the one seeing it. So I must change and represent him to myself as someone I desire to see. And I must persist in that belief until he conforms to the image I have created. That is what you are called upon to do. For you were made subject unto vanity and live alone in your world. So if you desire it to change, you alone must change it and live in the state of the desired change. I know this from experience because the night that I was lifted up to the state of perfection, I came upon this infinite sea of human imperfection. And as I glided by, all were made perfect in harmony with that state to which I was lifted. So you must lift yourself to the state you desire your world to reflect, because everything in it is yourself made visible. The whole vast world is projecting God, and God's name is I am. Believe my visions, for they have never betrayed me. I may betray my vision, but not by not accepting its message. But when I was lifted up, I was shown that everyone I encounter is myself. And when I represent that seeming other to myself as I would like him to be, to the degree that I persist in that assumption, he conforms to that state. Now in the Lord's hand there is a cup with foaming wine all mixed. Shall I not take the cup which the Father has given to me? Tonight I can truly say I have drunk the cup to the very dregs. I have played the white, the black, the yellow, the pink, the gray, the honored and the dishonored. I have played them all, this I know. Everyone will play all the characters expressed in the world. But let me assure you, who are here, that no man comes unto me save my Father calls him. You are here because you have reached the end of the road, and I have called you to play your part as the Lord God Jehovah. Start now to mold every being in your world into the form of love. But love, divided from imagination, is eternal death. If you do not know you are dealing with a state, you can love someone dearly yet keep him forever in an unlovely state. But you can take him out by the use of your imagination. We are here in this world of experience for a divine purpose, to know imagination. The world is dead, but you can begin now to overcome the last enemy of the world, the enemy of death, by imagining your friend is noble, wanted, and loved, and watch him become it. Save your friend from the state of poverty, and you are saving yourself. Don't be concerned as to how and when it will happen. It will happen, for the world is yours and all within it. The first son did not know this because he wasn't detached. He was never separated from the Father, so he didn't know that all this his Father possessed was his to appropriate. Yet you, who separated yourself from God, were dead and are now alive. You were lost and are now found. Like the seed, you have to be detached from the Father and fall into the ground to be made alive. For unless a seed falls into the ground, it remains alone. But if it falls into the ground and dies, it brings forth much. The creative power of your human imagination is the seed which falls into your fleshly body, the red earth called Adam. Hearing the word and applying its truth, your seed is made alive and begins to awake, and you realize who you really are. You are infinite love. But without the power of imagination, love itself is eternal death. Start now to change your world, to conform to your acts of love. But you cannot do it without imagination. Begin with self. Change your world and prove God's power is within you. Then you will know what it is to drink the cup which the Father has given you. It was God's infinite love that detached and allowed you to fall, for this separation is a fall and yet a beginning of a new creation. Just as the seed falls from a man and the new creation begins, you fell and began a new creation. For God came with you as your human imagination. Tonight, ask yourself, who am I? Where am I? If you do not like your answers, assume you are the person you would like to be, living where you would like to live. Persist in that assumption, and although denied by your senses and reason, if you persist, your desires will harden into fact. Start now to take God's gift of his creative power and create. God detached and dropped you in love, for God is love. And when he did, he buried the gift of his creative power called Jesus Christ in you. So now, like him, you can create. And as you do, your creation comes to life. Then you know that you no longer have to argue with the world, but can instantly change it to conform to the ideal that is in your being. We left that enormous field of perfection to be incarnated, isolated, and feel separated from everything in order to be individualized. This incarnation involves separation from the Father, death, and descent into hell. From that moment on, you seek the Father, the cause of all that is going on in your world, and despair, fearing you will never find him who was built into you from all eternity. Then one day, you will find David, the one and only who can reveal you to yourself. When David appears and calls you Father, you will be looking right into the eyes of the one who was put into the mind of man. Yet, so that man could not find out what God had done from the beginning until the end. You are detached and subjected unto futility in order to obtain the glorious liberty of the sons of the resurrection, being sons of God. But you cannot be a son of God until you are resurrected, born from above, and encounter the great David who stands before you and calls you Father. Tonight, ask yourself, who am I? Who am I? Where am I? If you do not like your answers, assume you are the person you would like to be, living where you would like to live. Persist in this assumption. And although denied by your senses and reason, if you persist, your desires will harden into fact. Start now to take God's gift of his creative power and create. There concludes tonight's lecture. But let me read this part to you. So tonight I ask you to exercise your own wonderful human imagination. Since your friends are only yourself out pictured, put them in a glorious light. Don't justify their actions by saying, it serves them right. Because all things exist in you. There is no one out there, but all in you. So if you fail 1,000 times saying, how often, Lord, must I forgive my brother who sinned against me? The answer will come 70 times 7. May I tell you, you can't say sin in any other way than as recorded in the 51st Psalm, the 4th verse. Against thee, O Lord, thee only have I sinned and done that which is evil in thy sight. Therefore thy justification is in order. Oh, who is this being in whom I have sinned? His name is I am. How have I sinned against thee and only thee? By seeing someone in my world that is in need and allowing them to remain there. For I cannot sin against another as I am the one seeing it. So I must change and represent him to myself as someone I desire to see. And I must persist in that belief until he conforms to the image I have created. That is what you are called upon to do. I trust tonight that the lecture made sense to you. The cup of experience. I trust that it does. Right? Imagination is God's great gift. It is God's great gift. And I like the example he gave. He says, if you could have $1 billion in the bank, let me read his words. Tonight you could have $1 billion in the bank and die of starvation if you didn't know it was there. Listen to it again. Tonight you could have $1 billion in the bank and die of starvation if you didn't know it was there. All that the Father has is yours, but you will never know it until you use your imagination to appropriate it. Let's look up the word appropriate. Because where's Merriam-Webster? Because if you say, you can say it in another way, but it's always the meaning, right? You can say, oh, is that appropriate? Or you can appropriate it. Appropriate. It says, it means right with respect to some end, need, use, or circumstance. Implies eminent or distinctive fitness. So it is appropriate, right? Implies harmony of mood or tone. And it also stresses adaptability and sometimes special readiness for use or action. So we have all these good things, but we have not appropriated it. We have not taken it as acceptable for ourselves. That's why if you had the money in the bank and you didn't know, you'd go hungry because you did not say, I'll take that. You didn't appropriate it. You didn't take it. So imagination is God's gift to humanity. So take it and use it to create your ideal life. Cyber, this is a beautiful question. He asked me, can I break down what assuming is to me and how am I actively persisting in an assumption throughout my day? Because I live this way every day. Assuming to me is accepting whatever it is I said I'm creating. Right now, I'm accepting the fact of selling out all of the cards, the Hermetic Oracle cards, as well as the September 2024 retreat to Barbados. Those are two things that are up there. So how I do this, just like the process Neville explained, what is the first thing I would do if I sold out all the cards? How would I behave? What's the first thing I would do? The first thing I would do is have a live stream and say, hey, we did it, y'alls. Right? That's the very first thing I would do. So what am I going to say to you? Oh my God, we did it, y'alls. That's the first thing I would say to you. So for me, I get into that state of relaxation. And the best place is for me if I'm driving or if I'm showering, because doing the dishes, that's autopilot. So now I am in a receptive mode and I begin to replay that. But I don't just replay it. There's a feeling of accomplishment, of having started and completing a task. So when I say, oh my God, we're sold out, y'all. Do you know how exciting that feels? To know that it went from invisible to visible. It went from an idea in my mind and now it is in your hands. Oh, there's something beautiful. And when I feel, because I'm the one looking at the numbers during the day, the fact to me is the numbers say, you've only sold 30. That's the fact. So what do I do? Well, I'm human. So the first thing sometimes I say is, oh man, am I really going to be able to do this? Seriously, that's what I say to myself. Am I really going to be able to do this? And when I ask myself that question, the answer comes, wait, do you know the law or you don't know the law? So I get back in there and I say, you know what? Yes, I can. What is my evidence? What does it feel like to me to be sold out? What does that feel like to me? And I bring myself back from that dark place over and over and over and over and over again. I did it. I am doing it. And I continue to do it until that which is objectified in my world appears. Okay? Same thing for the trip. Making sure that I'm going to have the money to go. It's not just for me, it's me. I got to pay for me and my boy. Right? Making sure that I have those things ready for us. So yes, when I look at my account and I'm like, whew, my account says, a retreat? Are you sure? That's what it says to me. And I respond, he who began a good work in me is faithful to complete it. I do not allow myself to drag in the trenches. Listen, I may fall because I can see the fact of what it is, but I don't allow myself to stay there. I get up because being human, I ask, how is this gonna happen? I'm like, bite your nails. I'm like, how is this gonna happen? And I'm like, what do you want? What's my evidence that the trip was a success? Hearing people talk about it and sharing what they learned and what they experienced. That. And there's certain people that I speak with so much. I know what their voice sounds like in my head. And so I hear them saying it. But I don't just hear them. When I hear them say it, my chest swells with pride and I say, yeah, we did have a good time, didn't we? We sure did. Right? That's what it is. So on a daily basis, That is what I do day in and day out, to be deliberate in my creations. I trust that answers your question. Because as I said, we're human here. And this is something that we're learning to do for the first time, in that all we've ever heard and learned was, if the Lord wills. Some people get it and some people don't. You got to be in the right place at the right time. You got to know a person. See, we've always heard that our whole lives. And we still hear it to this day. But because we've heard it so many times, we think it is true. Thus, we see it as being true. We see the evidence of it. So now a radical change of attitude is required. You're either for me or you're against me. So when we use the law, when we learn the law and we apply it to our lives, we can't go back and go, yeah, but you know what? No, I don't have a plan B. I hate being made to look foolish. Really, truly, I don't have a plan B. All I know is, what do you want? Experience in imagination what you would experience in reality if you had it. That's all I know. So that's what I practice day in and day out. And that, what Neville did is so, what I like about what Neville did is so beautiful, because he learned the Hermetic principles. Because really and truly, that is the root, that is the foundation of it all, is to learn those principles. And then it would make sense to you what he is explaining. Mentalism, the all is mind. The universe is a mental creation. Where is the imagination? Mental. Everything comes out of mental. It doesn't come from anywhere else. And so I know from experience that it can be challenging to hold yourself steady. But like I told my son the other day, you must anchor yourself to something that is immutable. You cannot anchor yourself to emotions. You cannot anchor yourself to people. Because, well, you know why. Emotions come and go. People come and go. But the law changes not. If you know that the all is mind, the universe is a mental creation, and as within, so without, as above, so below, and everything vibrates between two poles or swing to and fro, creating a rhythm, an ebb and a flow. Every cause has its effects, and every effect is cause, a projection of the will, giving life, giving form. If you know that, it does not matter what you see on the outside, because you know how it got there and you know how to change it. You're not at the mercy of emotions. You're not at the mercy of moods, but you know how to use emotions and you know how to use moods to propel yourself. That's the difference. Right? So, Cyber's here. Oh, you're welcome, Cyber. Marjorie. Listen, Marjorie's another one that is so focused and dedicated, and she practices revision day in and day out. That's Marjorie. You know, you gotta love Marjorie, man. She's amazing. Joyce, darling. Checkmate. Renee, Sugar Visions. Oh, I see you here. Oh, hi, David. You're here on YouTube. YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter. I see you all. Who's here on Fanbase tonight? Let's see. Flo Smiles is here. That deal. Hey, KZ808. Hook a brother up. Zeesty and Moon. You're all here. I just flipped back over. So it's not that I didn't see you. I'm just seeing you now, fan base. Because when I flipped over, there were only 3 of you in the space. So now that I'm back, I can see that the rest of you are here. So, like I say, I'm actually, a beautiful person suggested to me, Angela, people need a boot camp because people are still out there floundering around and they just don't get it, you know. We need a boot camp to, whip us into shape. And we were talking and we're talking about it. I'm working on it, okay? And I'm gonna do the boot camp. Just stay tuned for more. But the reason being, we keep looking for something, someone. And you'll notice sometimes that people come along and they show you these pictures. Oh, here's my this, here's my that, here's my Bugatti, here's this, blah, blah, blah. And then you come to find out it's only a rental and they're just doing it for show. Listen, when you anchor yourself to that which is immutable, you are not moved by the stories of other people. I'm not here to sell you a story. Because I can tell you, sure, I can say, yeah, I manifested this. Yes, I manifested that. But if you don't apply your imagination, what good is hearing about what I have done? It is irrelevant to you. If you need that to move you, you're going to have problems. Why? Because if the thing that you want to become does not move you, how do you think something that someone has is going to move you? The thing that you want to become is your inspiration. It's the thing that has to move you to act. That's why. So, we're supposed to be going to bed. Listen, Cyber, I know, right? Marjorie was always in the chat, but she's probably at work, and so we gotta cut her some slack. But there you have it. She says, "I'm busy making reality what I want it to be." You see, this is the thing. Seclude yourself in your closet mentally. Mentally, put yourself in the closet. See what you want to see, hear what you want to hear. You have a sense. I'm going to post it tonight. It's a short that I took from one of the lectures. I'm going to post it tonight on YouTube. Well, on all my social media, I'll post it. Depending on which ones will take the long form, I'll post it with YouTube, Fanbase, TikTok. Will have it. So whatever platform you follow me on, wait for it. It won't be long. Listen to it. Because Neville Goddard, because they're his words, not mine, but he's using the law and he's telling you verbatim how to use the law. But you see where we get caught up? I can't. But I need a plan B. What if this thing fails? What if this is all fake? You see what we do to ourselves? You have to leave that behind you. It is vomit. So stop returning to it. It has nothing of value for you anymore. Or in other words, the pearl of great price. The pearl of great price. You sell all that you have to get that. So when boot camp comes around, I'm going to have my foot up your butt and on your neck. That's okay. My proverbial foot will be on my butt too. Don't worry. I'm not excluded from it. So that will be the purpose, to whip us into shape, because we can't live like this anymore. We cannot go through the world constantly complaining and fretting. We can't do that anymore. It is counterproductive. It is ill use of the imagination that God so graciously bestowed upon each and every one of us. And you notice how George didn't get it. And, oh, look, there's Angela. No, she don't get no imagination. No imagination for you, Angela. No. Before the world was, I am. So I was given imagination way back then. Before the world was. I wasn't an afterthought, and neither were you. But we've got to use it wisely. Use it wisely tonight. As you rest in your bed, what is it that you want to see in your world. Because how did you come to that conclusion? Well, you're seeing what you don't want, so you can clearly see what you do want. I'm not asking if you think it's possible or if you deserve it or if you're worthy. I'm asking you, based upon what you presently see, you don't want that anymore. So what do you want? Name it, claim it. Second or third, I should say. What's the first thing you would do? What is the first thing that you would do if you had that thing? Well, then, experience that in imagination. When you do it, because you can't watch yourself doing it, you have to be like a dancer. If the dancer stands in front of the mirror and does not dance, he's just watching himself. But if he dances, so you have to act it out and watch yourself. Because when you act it out and you watch yourself act it out, it begins to feel a particular way to you. And when it feels that way to you, listen, it ignites you naturally. Because if you're sitting there and you're thinking, you know what, I really want a new job. And you start to get excited, but then you say, yeah, but look at the market. There ain't no jobs out there. Ain't nobody hiring now. Okay. Did I ask you what the world said? Did I ask you what the so-called facts were? No. I asked you, what do you want? Stop justifying the noise that you hear during the day. Stop doing that. But just toy around with what would it be like if I were gainfully employed? But notice how Neville says, if you have a friend and they are not gainfully employed, but they call you and say, oh my God, I really need a job. You know anybody? That's your cue. You can hear them talking to you because you're not deaf, but in your imagination, instead of hearing their voice telling you, oh my God, do you know anybody? Hear them say, girl, or my dog, yo, I just got the perfect job, man. The pay is off the chain. Hear them tell you that. But when you hear them tell you that, how would it make you feel to know that this person is no longer scraping the bottom of the barrel, but they are on the mountaintop and they can fend for themselves. They can pay their bills. They can feed their babies. They can listen. How does that make you feel to know that they can do that for themselves? See how it makes you feel? Whether or not you like them is irrelevant. I didn't ask you that either. But want the best for someone. Whether you like them or not is irrelevant. Just want the best for them and see it. See them as having it. And they may be like the other 9 lepers, you understand. They may never return to say anything because, listen, they may not know that it was you who was treading in the winepress for them. They may not know. But don't let that stop you from doing good for your brothers and sisters. So tonight, as you put your head on your pillow, if you are already there, what do you want? What's the first thing you would do? Then begin to experience that in your imagination over and over and over till it moves you, till it feels real to you. And go to sleep. And if it be long, wait. Because it will show up. It will. Let me go and post this thing so that you guys can, catch it. But I love you. Thank you all for being here tonight. I don't know how I go off on these tangents, but I just do. Yeah, I'm reading it there, I'm reading it there in the chat, 808. Joyce went to YouTube. That's where she is. I thought so. But yes, I love you. Rest well tonight and know that it is done. Thank you for that reminder, 808. It is done. Much love to each and every one of you. And remember, Thursday, if you get your questions in, Fanbase, they have their own, but YouTube and Patreon, they have their own as well. So get your questions in. what you know, don't seem to get. And I'll make a recording for you guys on Patreon and YouTube so that you can have the question answered so you can know how to apply it. All right. I love you. Rest well. Good night, my beautiful darlings. Good night.